Hi everyone, it's Dave Shapton from RedShark, and we're here for another RedShark Live, and we've got some interesting stuff for you as usual, including a new Canon camera, the XF 705, really interesting development. I've got Simon Wyndham here, our deputy editor, who's going to talk us through that. As usual, it would be great if you have any questions, just let us have them on the YouTube page. To get there from RedShark, you have to click through on the YouTube logo. That takes you through to the YouTube page hosting this session, and then you can type into the dialog box on the right, or just let us know on Twitter at RedShark News. So it's YouTube in the dialog box, or it's Twitter at RedShark News. So I just wanted to mention that there's been a few interesting things going on this week. It's fascinating to see how fast 8K technology is developing, and if you read RedShark at all, you'll know that we're very, very enthusiastic about 8K as a concept, as an idea, because it's a great demonstration of how we're always moving on, always improving what we do. As to whether it's necessary or appropriate or needed right now, that's an entirely different matter. And I think if you're working at the very top end, then absolutely get involved in it, and this is what is happening. Further down the scale in terms of budget and maybe number of viewers or expectations or technical requirements, it's less and less necessary until you get right down to the level of the very good mirrorless cameras that we have with us by Sony and Canon, Panasonic. This type of camera, the GH5, the A7, and now the new mirrorless cameras, the EOS R series, for example, and then maybe the Nikon Z6 and the Z7. We're not surprised anymore to see sensor resolutions up in the 30s and 40s of megapixels, maybe even 50s. In case you didn't know, 8K is around 32 or 35 megapixels, depending on the aspect ratio and a few other things that would change that. But typically, in the early 30s, we've had that resolution on sensors for some time. But do we get video off them at that resolution? Well, typically no. In fact, absolutely no. There are no handheld mirrorless cameras that will give you an 8K video output. Again, just to clear up any confusion, you might have seen that there are some 8K time lapses. The key to this is in the word time lapse, because of course time lapses are not made in real time. There's anything between like a few seconds and a few days in between frames that are taken in a time lapse. So it's easy enough to take a time lapse at 8K resolution and is then turned into video in post-production. So that isn't really the camera producing 8K video, it's the camera producing 8K images, which are then chained together to give you an 8K video. It's done outside of the camera. So this week we've seen apparently, reportedly strong rumours of Sony producing sensors with resolutions way up in the 8K area. And we've also seen specifications where they say they're capable, for example, of 8K video at, let's say, 30 frames per second. And so all sorts of people have been speculating that this means that 8K consumer cameras are just round the corner. And we published a story recently, well, this week, just saying be a little bit cautious about these reports. I don't doubt the veracity of them insofar as they are rumours and from a previously reliable source. You know, it's not binary. It's not that they're completely nonsense or they're completely true. There's kind of quantum uncertainty about this, but there seems to be a consensus that it is likely that these sensors are being produced. But actually, do not feel that that makes it inevitable or even likely that we will see consumer cameras producing 8K video immediately. And here's the reason. It's because of the data rates. You know, most cameras at the moment are architected around the idea of shooting 4K video. And that's sometimes a stretch. You know, sometimes you see disappointing bit rates. Sometimes you see lower frame rates than you'd like. Bear in mind that 8K is 4 times the data rate of 4K. So that's not just a bit more, that's a load more, that's 4 times. That's like you'd need 4 memory cards in parallel, for example, if you were going to use the same technology, if that technology was pushing those memory cards to the limit with 4K. You'd have to do something about this. Maybe you'd use a different compression scheme. Maybe you'd use HEVC, also known as H.265. That's perfectly valid. That's a good compression ratio, and we're going to talk about that in a minute with this Canon XF 705. But that still means you're recording double the data rate. So, you know, these increases are not trivial. Of course, they can be done in cameras that cost a lot of money in relative terms, but you can't just make a camera jump to this new capability without cost implications. And the other thing to bear in mind is that if it's hard enough to get 4K in focus with a large sensor, then it's even harder with 8K, you know, because if you're blurred by half a pixel, and these are very, very small pixels, then you'll be back to 4K. So you have an almost infinitesimally small opportunity to get yourself in focus. If your target is moving or if the camera's moving, then that's just really, really hard. There are other reasons for wanting to use 4K, but for using 8K. And again, we support the idea of 8K. If it turns out that these cameras are just around the corner, then that's great. I'd be really, really happy, but I just would urge some caution. And a few people in the comments took issue with me when I said that there is nobody currently asking for this type of camera shooting 8K. And I maintain my view, I stand by my view, but I would remind you that I tend to talk in hyperbolic language. So yeah, when I say nobody, I mean probably 1 in 10,000, which statistically is nobody. But of course it's not nobody, and that person contacted us and said yes, they would use such a camera, but I don't think they figure on the radar of manufacturers who are considering this as something that would lead consumer demand towards 8K. On the other hand, we've got the 2020 Olympics coming up, and that's going to be a huge driver for 8K. So who knows? Just don't necessarily assume that at CES in Las Vegas in January we're going to see 8K cameras at the low end. But who knows? Who knows? These days, that kind of leap is entirely possible. So, okay, I'm going to ask Simon to come out from behind the desk. And so we currently are running this as a 2-man operation. So you'll have to put up with this camera angle for a short while we're both in shot. So we've got a camera here, the new Canon XF 705, and it's quite a beast, isn't it, Simon?
It is. Let me just get my microphone on. It seems to be
Yeah. Low-tech issues, as ever.
So it's not going to rustle too much. Okay, yeah, it's the XF 705. And yeah, it's a bit of a beast actually. It's got a 1-inch CMOS, single CMOS sensor on it.
Yep.
Full 4K, obviously.
And it's bigger and heavier than you'd expect.
Yeah, I mean, if you know, and that's not it's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't want to make it sound like a negative thing. You know, if you compare it to other similar cameras of this size and type, yeah, it's got some heft to it, but it's in a good way. It feels very high quality.
Yeah.
You know, this LCD, it's just beautifully nice and chunky. You know, there's no flimsiness to it. So.
No. It also comes out the other side, doesn't it?
It also comes out both sides, yeah. So, you know.
Can you turn it around and it'll? Yeah.
So it's all
nice.
It's all very nicely put together.
And you were saying earlier that because of the position of the viewfinder, it's far enough away from you that you can use this as a kind of pseudo shoulder-mounted camera.
I know there are probably people out there that would take issue with me saying this. Oh, it's not a real ENG camera, but actually, I would be quite happy using it in this way if I needed to, with the support of my shoulder, and I can use all 3 controls on the lens here. So it's not too bad for doing that. I mean, obviously for extended periods, it's going to be not ideal, but if you need to. It's a bit more capable in that regard than some of the other cameras that I've seen.
Yes.
Due to the distance of this display. But as I say, I know there'll be ENG hardcore people out there that will be telling me, no, you can't do it. But I'm perfectly happy to use it in that way. But yeah, it's got two SD card slots, and you can set the camera to record HDR on the internal recording, but output an SDR signal to an external recorder. Okay,
and while we're talking about recording, let's just reiterate that this has as an option, it's not compulsory, but you can use HEVC, which is H265.
Yeah, this is the big thing. I mean, this is a camera that is built to last effectively. Its predecessor, I think it was the 305, has lasted quite a number of years. So this is the new camera, and this you can tell this is built to last. The HEVC recording, highly efficient recording system with very compact file sizes. It's 160 megabits per second, as high as you can go for 4K, and I think it's 60 megabits per second in HD, normal HD. But yeah,
so you've actually got a wide range of codecs, and I need to add here that we actually haven't done the review on this camera yet.
I should just add that if you want to, you can get it to record in the H.264 as well.
Oh yeah.
If you don't want to have that,
which is AVC Ultra and AVC Intra, I think. So we haven't actually reviewed this camera yet because I think the camera arrived independently of its power supply. It was offset by a few days, so we're going to be doing that over the next few days. And maybe sometime next week you'll see the full RedShark review of this. The other thing about this is, we're just conditioned to look at a camera in this form factor and expect it to have 3 chips and a prism.
Yeah, so this is a single chip 1-inch sensor, so it's quite a nicely sized sensor. You can get good control of depth of field with it, and you've got a lens it was 8.3 on the wide end down up to 124.5, so that's f2.8 at its widest, and it goes down to f4.5 at the full telephoto.
Sorry, what is the zoom range?
It's 8.3 to 124.5 according to that. Yes. So
that's pretty.
That's quite a big range. That's a big range. It's a servo lens. You have end stops obviously on the zoom. That's a given. But they're rotating, infinitely rotating servo rings on the main lens. But even on cameras like the EX series from Sony, they are also servo lenses. It's just that they've wangled it in a way it doesn't feel like it. So yeah, but the great thing about this is that you do have that ability in a traditional way to be able to control with all three fingers the lens.
Yes.
So people who like that type of control, manual control, will be right at home with it. You've got 5-axis internal stabilization.
What does that mean, 5-axis? Does it mean?
Yeah,
it means that.
Yeah, so you've got rotation, tilt, pan.
That's 3.
Yeah, I think there's also that because you've got the rotation. I think on.
Oh yes.
Don't quote me on that.
Yes.
But yeah,
it's hard to map 5 axes into 4 dimensions, but it's not just about sort of planar movements, is it? There are other types of movement as well.
It is. The result of that is very, very effective stabilization. There are two. You can put the stabilization into 2 different modes, and one is more suitable for sort of handheld walking along, and the other one is more suitable for. I believe if you were putting on a tripod and you're on the telephoto and you've got those very small vibration, very high frequency vibrations, it will take those out. So. And
of course, I mean, sorry, we're stating the obvious here, but it's arguably in body stabilization, but it's also in lens stabilization because the lens is part of the camera. They're not removable. They're all part of the same system. And I would always say that this is a huge advantage of a fixed lens system, fixed in the sense of you can't remove it or interchange it, because everything about the camera is optimized for that lens.
Yes, I mean that's the beauty of having a camera that has a built-in lens. Everything can be optimized. You can, you can do all kinds of corrections to any chrome aberration and anything like that.
And I also suspect that if you bought a lens of this quality separately, it would probably cost as much as the camera itself.
Yeah.
So you've not only got a lens which, if used separately, would almost by definition not be as highly optimized by the camera because it's not an intrinsic part of the camera, but you've got the full optimization on this. So I think there is a slight tendency of people working with cinema cameras to look down their noses at this kind of camera and say, look, it's just a cheap fixed lens. Nothing could be further than from the truth.
No, and I think it's a bit of an oddity, really, isn't it? That's the case. That a camera like this that you can pick up and shoot and not have to worry about having to attach all kinds of different manner of accessories to get it to work properly is somehow looked down upon. But the reality is that this type of camera is a workhorse, and there are many millions of people around the world who insist on using a camera like this, and it gets a lot of very good work done. And especially now that we've got 1-inch sensors, so you're no longer limited with the small sensor limitations that we had previously. You can actually get quite a cinematic look from it if you wanted to do that. You've got C-Log on a C-Log 3 on here.
So if you think about it in these terms, if you were going to be caught out, let's say you had like a spectacular, unexpected, earth-shattering event taking place in front of you, and this is the only camera you had on you, this is probably the camera you'd want to have.
It is. Cameras like this have other functions that you don't get a lot of the time on sort of cinema-based cameras or hybrid cameras.
Yeah.
And a big feature if you're doing documentary, for example, or any kind of event shooting, it has a cache record. So the camera can be recording in the background. So when you hit record, you get the previous few seconds.
Yeah. So
you haven't missed it. So if it's already happened, as long as your camera was pointing in the right direction in the first place, of course. But that can be quite.
So it completely obviates the need for the phrase "if only."
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like I say, you have to be pointing in the right direction. But if your camera was set up,
let's say you're set up on 10 Downing Street, you're waiting for the Prime Minister to come out, and somebody taps you on the shoulder, and you're looking in the wrong direction. This will catch it.
Yeah. you can get those previous valuable few seconds beforehand where the action happens.
Do you know how big that buffer is? Does it?
I'm not sure.
Varies with
I don't know.
Varies with frame rate
Yeah,
and quality, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, usually it's sort of between 5 and 10 seconds, but I because I haven't looked at this fully in detail yet.
Yeah.
Which I will do in the review. But I mean, it's a kind of functionality that you don't have. You've got your ND filters on here as well. Again, that's a convenience. You know, we've talked about this before. You don't have built-in ND filters on a DSLR or that sort of camera. And what I think is great is you've got this infrared slider, which allows you to see. It's a black and white picture, but it's the infrared
spectrum.
So yes, so you can go in complete darkness and still keep filming. And for some types of work that would be very, very useful. It's this is a type of camera that isn't necessarily going to be used for to shoot a Hollywood masterpiece, but it's the kind of camera you're going to need if you want to get the footage.
And good enough for pretty much any broadcast documentary, and potentially, you could see it used in drama as well, I suppose, as a fill-in.
Yeah, there's no reason why not. I mean, you've got full SDI output. You can record to external recorders on it. You've got full control over the picture profiles. It's very in-depth piece of kit, and the colour science on it is very good. Canon really have got their colour science dialed in now.
So despite having some radical new features like the HEVC H265 recording and the single sensor architecture, it is pretty much a camera you can rely on as a known quantity.
Yeah. There are you're not going to get any nasty surprises.
No. No. And the previous, what was the previous one? The XF 305?
I think it was the 305.
Yeah, which has been a workhorse for. Well, I think I first saw it in 2011.
Yeah,
and I think it's probably out before then.
Yeah, it's getting on a bit.
Yeah, but it's only
very good run.
May even be on sale for all I know. It's certainly until very recently been on sale.
Yeah, but it goes to show, that a camera like this, I think it's about £6,500, something around that mark.
So $7,500, very roughly.
Yeah, but when you consider that a camera like this could potentially last that long, we're used to having, these hybrid cameras, which a year later a camera will come out that's, so much better that it effectively gets replaced. That's not really the case with a camera like this. This is more of something you can buy and know that it's an investment that's going to keep working for a long time.
And I just to put this in context, I always like to compare this with, say, buying a car. If you're a plumber, electrician, and you have to buy a small van, it's going to cost in pounds. What's it going to cost? £12,000.
Yeah.
£200 a week to lease. Yeah. Something like that. This is of that order of magnitude. If this is your main tool and you're a professional, I wouldn't say it's a trivial cost, but I've heard a few people look at this and say, "Oh, that's expensive." Not if you're the sort of person who would use it.
If you've got the work coming in, this camera will pay itself off in a few jobs, and then you've got all those years where it's literally paying you back. So it's.
And it's more expensive than a DSLR or a mirrorless because it's not a DSLR or a mirrorless.
No. I mean, a DSLR or mirrorless you will not get a lens like this with that sort of range.
No.
Off the box. I mean, if you a really decent lens with a good range on a DSLR or mirrorless, you're looking for a good quality one at about £1,000, for the lens it's on its own.
Yeah.
And
then you'll have all the ergonomic issues on a DSLR or mirrorless too.
And that's not going to go from something like 8.3mm to 124.
No.
It's just not going to happen. So you're going to need a few lenses for that. This you don't need to think about that kind of thing. And it's intuitive to use. You've got instant clip reviews. You know, anyone who's using an ENG camera will know that kind of thing. We can just hit that and it plays back. Yeah, you know, it's a known quantity, and you've got XLR inputs on it. It's 4-channel audio, and those 4 channels you can have. You have 2 XLR inputs on it, and the channel 3 and 4 you can either have as a stereo internal mic, or you can have it as a stereo 3.5mm mic input. There, you can choose which one you want. So you know that kind of versatility. Again, you're not going to get that with a hybrid camera. It's a totally different beast, and you know we need to remember that. You know, really need to keep re-emphasising that. They're not to be talked about and compared really in the same.
No. And when you compare with what was about, say, 15 years ago, when you'd be paying like £65,000 for a Sony 750, was it?
Yeah.
BVW 750 or something.
Yeah.
which was only HD. There's no comparison. We're living in a golden age, in my view. Look, we've got some questions flooding in here. So, would you consider low light to be a strength with this camera? Depends what you mean by low light, I suppose.
Yes, I mean, as I say, I haven't fully tested it yet. From what I've been playing around so far, it does appear to me to be a very low noise camera. You know, I've put the gain up and it doesn't seem to gain much noise. So I would say yes, it is a good low light camera. I mean, the fact that you can put it into the infrared mode means it's a pitch black camera. Effectively, you won't get colour, but you can shoot perfectly happily.
You just have to heat up your subject with a Bunsen burner first. So the XF705 seems like a cool broadcast camera. Are there any tally or intercoms features in place? I don't think so.
I'm not sure about intercom features. I mean, you've got
what's that? Is that an infrared remote control thing on the front?
On the front there.
But it's very easy to apply these things externally.
Well, yes, it is. I mean, you know, in terms of sort of wireless mics and things, you've got the usual sort of hot shoe.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of quality, stick it on a tripod, put a bigger viewfinder on it, an Atomos or a small HD or something like that.
Yeah.
And while you won't have the same kind of CCU control over this, as an ad hoc broadcast camera, I think it would do a good job.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of EFP, ENG rather than sort of studio or thing, but you could apply it to that situation if you so please. There's no reason why not.
Yeah. So another question: Is there built-in live streaming functionality?
No.
There's Wi-Fi.
It has Wi-Fi
for file transfer.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi is for sort of FTP file transfer, but it's not a street.
But again, don't forget it's very easy now to attach external devices for streaming, and not only streaming to an end user using conventional streaming protocols, but also things like Newtek's NDI, which more and more manufacturers are taking on, and this is a way of sending very high quality video over IP with very little effort. You've got companies like Bird Dog who will produce a little box you put on the back of this and take the SDI out and just turn it into an IP feed, and whatever else you have on the network will see this as a source. You don't have to put any IP addresses in or anything like that. So no, but I think in a sense it's becoming less and less important because there are modular add-ons that you can have. Maybe you'd like to have them built into the camera because that always kind of ages the camera.
Yeah, I mean, different protocols come out, don't they? But it also pushes up the price, I guess.
Yeah. Is it necessary, this is interesting, is it necessary to differentiate between broadcast and corporate cameras and electronic cinema cameras? So basically, is it necessary, insofar as this isn't a cinema camera, is it necessary to distinguish between this kind of camera and cinema cameras anymore? I think that's what the questioner is saying.
I think yes, because I mean, although it's a 1-inch chip, that's smaller than your average Super 35 or even sort of Micro Four Thirds system. And as a cinema camera, you would, for doing dramatic productions, generally you would want to be able to choose your lenses. But by the same token, that's not to say that you couldn't use it. You can use the camera for whatever you want to use it.
You've got the cine modes, you've got the potential for shallow depth of field.
If this was your camera and you wanted to make a low budget feature film, there's nothing stopping
you. Do a great job with it,
No, there's nothing stopping you. But it's talking about what is the ideal tool for the job that you want.
It's about optimization, isn't it?
Yeah.
Would you say this is a generalist sort of camera?
Definitely. Yeah. But you could film a corporate production and make it look very nicely high end because you have that slightly larger chip and you can shoot in log and 10-bit file recording, so you've got more freedom with the grade there. So you can go to a certain point, but if you were making a dedicated feature film, you would generally you'd want to have a camera.
I think that's the test, isn't it? If you were on a movie set and you had the budget to choose just about any camera, you wouldn't choose this kind of camera because there are other cameras that are more optimized for that, for having a larger crew, for having cine type lenses, kind of lighting that you have, and so on. If you're at the other end of the scale where you need something very small and handheld, there are all kinds of options, or for something very cheap, there are all kinds of options. This comes like firmly in the middle, I would say, and because of that, it is suited for such a wide range of applications.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you can certainly shoot drama on it. It's you can use a camera for whatever you want to, really, because I mean, we see this time and time again where a company will release a particular piece of gear and people use it for the use it wasn't intended for.
Yes.
The original Pocket Cinema camera is an example of that, and so is the original 5D Mark II.
Yeah, and all those. Well, I say all of them. There were a few movies made with a PD 150 or whatever.
Well, I mean, there's Gareth Evans, who I wrote an article recently, and his first feature film in Indonesia, Meranti, was shot on an HPX 500, an ENG camera. So, it's
okay. Well, we've got a few other questions there, but I think we've covered them all. Simon, if you'd like to get back to your station and get ready to fade us out. What I'd like to say is, well, thanks obviously for watching again. It's always great fun. And do share this. I don't know if you realise that when this is finished, within a few minutes, it will become available as, on demand. So the fact that you've seen it in real time doesn't mean that your friends have missed it. Just share it and they'll be able to see it. And we find that we get enormous numbers more watching it afterwards because you can watch it whenever you like. So thanks again. We'll be back soon and we'll have something else really good to talk about. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to share. See you soon.